Liberty's leave policy was tremendous. Having the ability to take 16 weeks off, fully paid to bond with my child, was an incredible experience.
At Liberty Mutual, you can find a career that supports you at every step, even baby steps. We offer up to 16 weeks parental leave for new moms and dads. And because not everyone's pathway to parenthood looks the same, we offer robust fertility, surrogacy, and adoption benefits too. Learn more at libertymutualcareers.com and pursue your tomorrow today.
Enjoy the taste of summer no matter what the weather when you head to Maverick for some Mountain Dew Baja Blast. You'll love the legendary, refreshing tropical lime flavor. And to make the sweetness last longer, Maverick now has it in 1-liter bottles. For a limited time, get 2 for $5. Single purchase regular price. Plus, Adventure Club members get 25 bonus trail points with purchase. So blast into Maverick today and enjoy that unmistakable Baja flavor. Maverick. Adventure's first stop.
I'm Laurah Norton, and this is One Strange Thing, the show where we search the nation's news archives for stories that can't quite be explained. In the early 1940s, a man named Roy Beebe lived in Southern California. There, he grew vegetables. And we don't want you to imagine an old man puttering around his backyard garden and plucking underripe cherry tomatoes or mediocre melons. No, this 58-year-old father of 6 who sauntered through his yard in utility pants and galoshes, he grew vegetables with a capital V, as in giant ones. Imagine, if you will, 5-pound tomatoes, 8-pound onions, carrots 2 feet long. A mad scientist's dream. But there was not an experimental lab in sight. There was just Roy and his plants. An August 1942 Wide World report called the scene, quote, a backyard geologic Garden of Eden. Roy Beebe had made his family's Long Beach home a bioscience playground. Per the Long Beach Press-Telegram, Roy was an agricultural chemist by trade. As a child in Indiana, he developed an interest in plants, and he was no stranger to backyard farming. Years before the giant vegetables that made headlines, he'd grown several, quote, better than average crops of corn in his Long Beach backyard. The Kraft Corporation had taken note and hired him in 1938 to do soil research. 4 years later, Roy's backyard vegetables once again drew attention. His crop was big, literally. As he told Wide World reporter Ted Gill, his process for growing the giant veggies was deceptively simple. He was using different metals and chemicals to recreate the soil of the primeval world. After all, everything was enormous back then, right? The lizards, the ferns, even the bugs. So if one can make the soil in 1942 more like it was in prehistoric times, the possibilities were, well, huge. Maybe limitless. And Roy Beebe figured that he was the man to give it a go. Today, our grocery stores are, unfortunately, lacking in onions the size of newborn babies. And we might have Roy Beebe to blame for that. According to the Santa Ana Register, he had absolutely no interest in commercializing his process. His goal was, ultimately, to create a healthier and more efficient veggie, not feed an entire family on a single avocado. The size of his crop was impressive, but it was not his end game. He told the Register, quote, I am interested in producing big nutrition plants. If a person has a chronic disease, there is a cause for it. And if there is a cause, there is also a cure. And Roy was into health. Big into health, as you might imagine. His giant vegetables would not be his last foray into healing remedies. In fact, a June 28, 1944 Long Beach Independent column mentions yet another project. A very unusual one, even for Roy Beebe. And this is where our story really begins. You see, Roy didn't just grow plants. He also claimed to have harnessed cosmic rays and tapped into their potential as a health regimen. And what exactly is a cosmic ray? Here's the short version. In the early 1900s, Austrian physicist Victor Hess was running experiments out of a hot air balloon, thousands of feet in the air. According to the Nobel Institute, Hess found that the Earth's atmosphere always contains high-energy particles, or radiation. And, in fact, that radiation levels increase as you get further into the atmosphere. The source couldn't be the sun, because the levels acted that way whether it was day or night or even a solar eclipse. Hess and his research partner, Carl Anderson, won the Nobel Prize for Physics in 1936. To this day, we don't know for sure where cosmic rays come from. And while they might have been in the news in the 1930s and 1940s, there certainly wasn't any indication that exposure would be healthy for humans. Why Roy Beebe felt like he could research radiation in the sky like he did minerals in the soil? That's unclear. In 2011, the Long Beach Press-Telegram reported that Roy'd seen Halley's Comet in 1910 at age 26, and that he'd become obsessed with rays and static. Maybe that was his inspiration. In a July 1945 account, Roy told the Long Beach Independent that he'd actually, quote, captured and controlled cosmic rays back in 1910. But only recently, he told the paper, had he harnessed them, quote, for the good of humanity. So, according to Roy, he'd captured the rays. He'd harnessed them, somehow, for health. For the good of humanity, to quote him directly. But how did he get the word out in those early days? We're not sure. But we think we know why, once people heard, his idea caught on so quickly. The Universal Press seems to think world events had something to do with it. In September of 1945, Ed Barlow wrote that the previous month's twin atomic bomb strikes in Japan had made many Americans anxious about radiation and their health. The United States was a country in search of remedies, and Roy claimed to have them. Roy told the UP that the crowds, quote, just heard about it and kept coming to me, and I couldn't stop it. Eventually, Roy Beebe's cosmic rays became big news, nationwide news. People were flocking to Roy's home on Fashion Avenue. There, the new health craze was unfolding in spectacular fashion. Roy was offering folks the chance to sit in his yard, which was strung with wires. And those wires, they were supposedly channeling cosmic rays. You could either sit near them and bask or hold them for a direct dose. The wires ran to and from a black box that was apparently holding the rays, covered in levers and dials, and standing as wide and tall as a modern refrigerator. While visitors were basking, they could eat snacks enhanced with cosmic wheat and cosmic corn, and take sips of cosmic water. The giant vegetables were not mentioned. Perhaps Roy had lost interest at that point. Now, Roy, he wasn't charging any money to come visit the rays or eat his cosmic snacks, though he didn't turn down donations from his new followers. And those followers, they weren't just there to soak up some preventative rays. Local papers in Long Beach reported that the rays devotees were seeking everything from pain relief to cancer treatment. And Life magazine visited Roy's home late that summer. The black and white photos taken by their journalist, Martha Holmes, depict a jubilant atmosphere. Men and women of all ages had packed the Beebe's backyard, lining the mid-century suburban streets with their cars. However, the rays were not universally popular. The Long Beach Independent wrote a very skeptical article on July 24, 1945. They suggested Roy was, quote, using mesmerism, self-hypnotism, and plain hoax to his advantage. And there was more. They'd reached out to a scientist at Caltech for a fact check as to whether cosmic rays could actually do anything at all. But in the 1940s, this was a nascent science, even for the professionals. And so, convinced that sitting in Roy's backyard and holding wires was doing something good, people kept coming in droves and eventually arrived by the thousands a day. This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Whether you love true crime or comedy, celebrity interviews or news, you call the shots on what's in your podcast queue. And guess what? Now you can call them on your auto insurance too with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive. It works just the way it sounds. You tell Progressive how much you want to pay for car insurance, and they'll show you coverage options that fit your budget. Get your quote today at Progressive.com to join the over 28 million drivers who trust Progressive. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law.
When you're in winter's favorite town, the snow-covered mountains surround you. A historic Main Street charms you. And every day brings a new adventure. Welcome to Park City, Utah. Naturally, winter's favorite town. Join the experience at visitparkcity.com.
Meanwhile, Roy's neighbor's patience was wearing thin. By September 1945, the Universal Press had picked up the story and ran it in papers across the country. As the fervor grew, Roy's neighbors in Long Beach were getting more vocal. According to the UP, those neighbors complained that Roy's new peak of 4,000 visitors a day was disturbing their peace. One neighbor told the UP that the visitors, quote, stirred up dust, tangled traffic, made noises, sang, built bonfires, and made funny faces at passing children. Another declared that visitors regularly asked to use the neighbors' bathrooms as they waited in line, and that if they weren't allowed in, a front yard would often work just as well. After a heated public meeting on the matter, in which a city councilman was slapped by an unidentified woman, Roy was given 30 days to move his cosmic ray operation elsewhere. Otherwise, he'd be declared a public nuisance. And there was more. It seems that Roy Beebe was increasingly aware of the risky business that was running a holistic health mecca. He told the UP that not only was he not a doctor, but he'd never actually claimed someone could become sick or well by visiting him. In any case, Roy was probably smart to start covering his tracks. On April 13th, 1946, over 6 months after his neighbors started to complain, the UP ran an update. It turned out that the Beebe family was expanding their donation-fueled mission to harness cosmic rays. Now, Charles and Paul Beebe, Roy's adult sons, were operating open-air cosmic ray plants just outside Long Beach proper. And apparently, these sons, they'd been arrested. The previous day, April 12th, law enforcement had swarmed these so-called plants, suspecting fraud, and they were accompanied by a scientist to help them make sense of whatever they found. Strangely enough, that scientist was none other than Carl Anderson, that Nobel Prize winner who'd studied cosmic rays with Victor Hess. Why? Well, we can only assume that Anderson was having a slow day at the lab. When they arrived, they found more than 100 elderly people holding wires or sitting in their cars with the wires clipped on to soak up the rays. Carl Anderson, who, we cannot emphasize enough, had won the Nobel Prize, took a look around. He determined that most of the wires weren't actually connected to anything. And those that were connected to the big black cosmic ray box, to Anderson's eyes, that big box was nothing more than, quote, a Rube Goldberg machine. If you're not familiar, think of the board game Mousetrap or those YouTube videos of complex systems designed to do simple things. A guy knocks over a pile of dominoes, which hits a lever, which sends a toy car careening down a ramp, all to do something simple like flip a light switch. On April 15th, a longer version of that same article appeared in several local papers with an important addendum. Law enforcement officers could not find the elder Beebe. The sons were charged with 8 counts of violating local business and health codes. The UP quoted one of the brothers, and we're not sure which, saying that their devices were pushing static out of the air. He said, quote, "When people are full of static, they get sick, or they get fussy and start persecuting us." This incident, by any stretch of the imagination, should have been the end of the Beebe family's cosmic rays. A picture of the U.S. regulatory system working as designed, protecting consumers. The unmasking of a likely snake oil peddler and his shady family business. Except for one strange thing. Or really, 2 strange things. First, and maybe more mundane, all but one of the charges against Roy's sons were dropped. We don't know why exactly. Court documents from the 1940s are, unsurprisingly, difficult to get a hold of. But we can tell you this. According to the Long Beach Independent, Charles and Paul Beebe were charged with violating the Medical Practices Act, the Pure Foods Act, the Pure Drugs Act, and California food sanitation laws. All of that was dropped, save for a single and minor labeling technicality. And that last charge might explain a shift in the rhetoric from the Beebe family. Beginning in 1947, all of their references to the health benefits of cosmic rays ceased, and suddenly, no more declarations that static makes you sick. No more touting cure-all properties of cosmic corn. Which brings us to that other strange thing. All of this legal turmoil, it didn't stop people from coming. Not by a long shot. Instead, Roy Beebe moved the business out of his home and into the future. A year after his sons were arrested, Roy began construction on a 25-acre complex just a couple miles north of their home. It was entirely funded by donations from cosmic ray connoisseurs. As it turned out, several of them were very wealthy. In the wake of the family's legal troubles, Roy made his intentions abundantly clear. This was going to be a school for agricultural research. It was not a clinic. It was not a medical facility. He added, speaking with the Associated Press in June of 1947, that, quote, "If anybody calls it a health resort, I'll whip 'em." Let's hope that no one did. When the space opened up to the public, the Associated Press reported that 10,000 people streamed in on the first day, all, as before, free of charge. Even partially finished, the compound was strung with wires to catch cosmic rays and eliminate static. The visiting AP reporter, a man named Hal Boyle, noted a number of sickly and elderly visitors clutching wires. One woman told Boyle that she was from Washington State and came on a neighbor's suggestion. "He came here, and after 2 weeks, he coughed up his cancer. I've been troubled by gallstones myself." The same woman attempted to show Boyle how to experience the cosmic rays. The following is directly from Boyle's account. Quote, "She pointed at my foot on the ground. 'Does it feel any way?' she asked. 'Yes, it feels cool,' I said. A breeze was blowing. 'No,' she said. 'It's warm. But everybody can't feel it. My gallstones are better. I can tell by the pain in my side. That means they're going away. I may have to stay here 3 or 4 years to get well.'" Boyle adds that, curious, he picked up one of the wires resting on the ground. He felt nothing. That campus, whatever the purpose it served, was not to last forever. The Beebes eventually took money from the state of California in exchange for those 25 acres. State Route 91 sprung up in its place. The Long Beach Press-Telegram reported that Roy Beebe and his family relocated to San Bernardino County with a small colony of followers. From there, we don't know much about the rest of his life. When Roy Beebe died in 1966, he'd been out of the headlines for a few decades. In his Long Beach Press-Telegram obituary, for which no author is credited, he's remembered as, quote, Roy Beebe, producer of health foods. The obituary details the soil experiments, the giant vegetables, but there was not a single mention of cosmic rays or the hundreds of people who earnestly believed that Roy Beebe's wires had saved their lives. We now know that all that talk of static and cosmic rays was pseudoscience at best. Many of Roy's contemporaries had suspected as much, even in the 1940s. Still, isn't it, well, strange to not mention it at all on his passing? But decades after Roy's death, the same paper that ran that obituary published a more complete, maybe more compassionate take on the whole ordeal. It came from someone who certainly knew Roy Beebe well. Ginger Moody, Roy's granddaughter, wrote into the Long Beach Press-Telegram in August of 2011. She said, in part, quote, I thought everyone had a grandfather who had a cosmic ray. He sincerely believed in the cosmic ray. I don't know why. Faith healing or the power of the mind, but people really did get cured when they came. And why did people feel better? Maybe it was Roy's health foods, or sitting in the California sunshine, or the warm friendship of fellow Ray devotees. An oasis in a world that had so long been at war. Maybe the why of it doesn't really matter. Maybe we all find our own version of Roy's rays, whatever and wherever they are, to bask in for just a moment, when we can. We hope you'll join us next time for another real-life story from the fine print of America's local papers. From the lives of regular people, just like you and me, except for one strange thing. Oh, and strangers. One Strange Thing is an entirely independent production. To support the show, and to hear more of the entirely true and enticingly peculiar, join us over on Patreon. There you'll get ad-free early releases of our regular episodes, plus a full-length bonus episode every month, and plenty of other fun content. We hope you'll check it out. Please stay tuned for a moment to hear a promo from one of our favorite shows. We hope you'll give them a listen.
Hey everyone, Stephen Ray Morris here, audio engineer and podcast producer, host of The Purrcast, a podcast about cats, and See Jurassic Right, a podcast about Jurassic Park and dinosaurs. I'm very excited today to announce my newest podcast endeavor, the first episode dropping Friday, February 12th. It's called Everything But the Movie, a Star Wars Book Club podcast. That's right, I'm going to be heading to a galaxy far, far away, bi-monthly, bi-weekly, twice a month to chat about my favorite books set in the Star Wars universe. Currently, Star Wars literature can be divided into two segments: Legends, the expanded universe of my childhood and all 90s kids, and Canon, Star Wars stories created after Disney's purchase of Lucasfilm in 2014. Now, I'm not here to pick sides, as each month on this podcast I will cover one book from the new canon to read and one book from Legends to read and share with y'all. I love it all. So now that you have your path, I'm looking forward to reading along with you. Please rate, review, and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts so you'll be ready for when episodes start dropping, and follow the podcast on social media at EBTM Star Wars on Twitter and Instagram. See you soon, and of course, may the Force be with you.